All right, strap in, folks, and I'm going to take you on a journey. And forgive me that I have received so much information, and there is so much to say about the events surrounding Benjamin Doyle, Green List MP, that is going to take some time to unpick. And the story you are hearing in mainstream media is not the true story, and seems to me to be completely warped and at odds with the morality and feelings of many New Zealanders. I want to begin by saying Mr. Doyle has not been convicted of any crime. As far as we know at this stage, he is not under investigation for any crime. But his social media profiles, particularly on Instagram, have been the subject of some scrutiny. And it would appear recently that Mr. Doyle, who was a strong advocate for the use of puberty blockers on children against the expert advice of the majority of clinicians around the world. Mr. Doyle also describes himself as one non-binary. He is a him. He's clearly a bloke. We're not going to play that game here at the platform. You can get upset about it as you want. Benjamin Doyle, his name's Benjamin. He's got a moustache. He's a guy. And he can call himself non-binary, but he's not. He's clearly binary. He's clearly one thing rather than the t'other. His social media posts going back several years have been scrutinised by someone who has shared that information to many media outlets, so the platform included, and to some politicians. And what that analysis of his media profile shows is disturbing images which would appear to sexualise children and make comments about them in a sexualised context. It is believed that one of the child in some of these images is in fact his son. And could you please strap in for this, though? I saw someone refer to his son as his daughter today, and because of that, I'm going to share with you a piece of information I was reluctant to. I now have 3 sources who tell me that Ben Doyle is in the process of transitioning his son to be his daughter. This is a young child by the looks of the photos. And I realise there's a child involved here. I'm not going to give the child's name. I now have 3 individual sources. Chantel Baker has said it online. I went and sought some other confirmations. 3 people who say Benjamin Doyle is transitioning his son. No wonder he was interested in the puberty blockers, from being a man to a girl. 52, as I understand, of his posts on Instagram and X have recently been deleted. He is scrubbing clean his social media accounts. But on his Instagram account, and listen carefully, because if you're like me, you had to have someone explain this to you. And I did talk to some people who know about the internet last night. You have in your profiles on various social media platforms a series of what are called emojis. They are symbols that supposedly say something about you and give people looking at your profile an idea of who you are and what you're into. One of the emojis on Benjamin Doyle's account is a blue swirling motif. That blue swirling motif is generally regarded online as a symbol that pedophiles use to identify themselves to each other. It has been identified as such by the FBI and Interpol, and on meta platforms, the use of that symbol, that nod or wink between pedophiles, is banned. All right? This is one of the things that has raised people's concerns about Benjamin Doyle. Benjamin Doyle is on holiday. He is being given a week off. Benjamin Doyle could front to the media and explain what has gone on here. But I wanted to make those things clear to you. Benjamin Doyle is someone who is pro-trans. As I said, I have 3 separate people who have talked to me Two of them, I would say, incredibly reliable sources in this regard. The other one, a reliable source, who tell me that Ben Doyle and his partner, look, this is in the public arena now, I'm going to say it. His partner, who I understand also was once a student of his when he was a teacher, are transitioning their child. And I just think, you can say it's legal or anything, I think kids, there is no such thing as a trans kid, there's a screwed up parent or parents. Okay, so knowing all that, knowing that the game's afoot, that Winston Peters has called this out yesterday, I did an interview with him which has had tens of thousands of views. So the media, of course, our liberal mainstream media, go running to the Green Party, and there was a stand-up press conference with co-leaders Marama Davidson and Chloe Schwabrook in the foyer at Parliament yesterday. Let's have a listen to that.
Today, I want to address the comments that the Deputy Prime Minister has made about a Green Member of Parliament and the harm this is causing. We are calling on the Prime Minister to take responsibility for the behaviour of his coalition colleague. We are deeply concerned that the Deputy Prime Minister has doubled down on disinformation and is actively fanning flames of hatred towards the beautiful rainbow community. I am especially concerned about the risk of real violence. Over the weekend, Green Party representatives reached out to the Prime Minister directly and New Zealand First's Chief of Staff to ensure they understand the danger this behaviour creates. I want to be extremely clear here. We are currently screening an immense number of death threats and abuse directed at our MP, Benjamin Doyle, and their precious tamaiti. These threats are driven by dangerous conspiracy thinking and are amplified by Destiny's Church and the Deputy Prime Minister. Members of any minority community, like our rainbow community, are accustomed to using and co-opting terms that may not be well understood by external groups, oftentimes with irreverence and absurdity. The central conspiracy here is that the use of such a word on a private account by an MP before they were an MP is inherently suspicious. This isn't the standard politicking by the Deputy Prime Minister. This isn't a game of who's winning this round of clickbait. Just a month ago, we've seen Destiny Church physically attack people at drag storytime based on the deeply dangerous trope that the rainbow community presents a danger to children. These attacks on Benjamin come from the same playbook. We are calling on the Prime Minister to shut down this behaviour and draw a clear line that is not acceptable, that this is not acceptable within his government.
All right, so I've told you some more about Benjamin Doyle. Winston Peters calls him out yesterday, and the Greens fight back with that rather measured statement from Marama Davidson. I need to tell you another fact that is being totally misreported across this country. The death threats against Benjamin Doyle predated Mr. Peters' comments. Those death threats came after a speech outside Parliament where he strongly advocated for the genital mutilation and chemical castration of children on the taxpayer's dime. That's where the death threats came from. His people even told Mr. Peters' people that, yes, these death threats aren't a result of what Mr. Peters said. They come before that. But when you're playing the victim, timelines don't tend to matter so much. I asked the Prime Minister yesterday, and I have seen no reports that any complaints about these death threats have been made to the police by the Green Party. I wait with bated breath. These immense number of death threats, apparently, I wait with bated breath to see if police are investigating, and presume they're online and you can trace these people. We can trace the rather strange Instagram and X posts of Mr. Doyle, can't we? Mr. Doyle, he, him. All right, so that seems strange, but the Greens didn't leave it there, because Chloe Swarbrick, looking, I've got to say, under more pressure than I've ever seen, was standing next to Marama Davidson. And some questions started coming at her, and this is where things got really weird.
Questions?
What was the Prime Minister's response when you reached out?
So I directly tried to get in touch with the Prime Minister on Saturday morning, I believe, and he ended up passing that along to his Chief of Staff. So both our Chief of Staff from the Green Party and the National Party Chief of Staff had a conversation about the real world harm. I again have reached out to the Prime Minister directly this morning via the phone and have not yet heard back.
Have you asked Benjamin about the posts on the question and the language used on the posts that have their child in it, and what the intent was?
Yeah, look, I want to be clear again here. I can completely understand the job that you guys have to do with regard to trying to help the general public to understand this, but let's just be clear about the facts. What we're talking about is an account that was a private account that existed before they were a Member of Parliament. Again, these posts also were before they were a Member of Parliament, and the terminology that was used as a member of the queer community, I can reflect on the fact that the kind of oversimplified way that things are being presented right now in the Twitter sphere is just not representative of the way that we navigate the world with irreverence and absurdity. To the point of the posts with their child, again, this was a private account, and to that effect, again, it's just somebody navigating their lives.
Well, I guess the account's still being used when they became...
So the posts in question are from prior to them being a Member of Parliament, and again, the account was a private account.
Were the posts appropriate, regardless of whether they're using that terminology, were the image of a child, is that appropriate?
You are, I think, trying to put this in quite an oversimplified frame. Again, the language that we're talking about, the posts of somebody from the rainbow community putting a picture out with their child on a private account, I think it is entirely appropriate that again, what we're talking about here is a member of the queer community using language that is absurd and irreverent and oftentimes used within the queer community. Context is critical. Sorry?
Accept that it's a vulgar, it's actually explicit term?
I accept that there are words that are used in different ways by different people. What I'm telling you is that a member of the queer community. Sorry, if I may.
Quite a generalisation to say that the queer community accepts in general for vulgar, explicit language.
I'm not saying that at all. What I'm saying is that minority communities oftentimes end up using language or co-opting language, which can be considered to be slurs or otherwise by external groups in ways that are absurd and irreverent. And I believe that there is a level of social responsibility that we as members of Parliament and you all as members of the news media have with regard to not oversimplify this story.
Can I ask about the duty of care to Benjamin? Was the party aware of this account when they became an MP? Was the party aware of those images and how they could be interpreted by other people? And was enough support put around Benjamin, or was enough advice given to Benjamin that may not be appropriate for a Member of Parliament?
So these are all discussions which, of course, you'll accept that we'll be having over the next few days with regard to kind of what happened and how things ended up playing out, and especially how things got into kind of this public sphere right now. But what I can tell you is that that account has been private since well before Benjamin became a Member of Parliament.
But was the Green Party aware of it before Benjamin became an MP?
Again, we'll need to look into the detail of that for you, Jenna.
I think both of you follow the account, right?
Yeah, we'll need to look into the detail of that for you, Jenna. I follow approximately 2,000 accounts. Sorry, Jason.
When did you start following the account?
I wouldn't be able to tell you, Jason.
Was it before he was a Member of Parliament, though? I'm sure you...
Benjamin's pronouns are they, them.
Sorry,
yeah.
my mistake. When... Did you start following the account before they were a member of Parliament?
I assume so.
But the trawling through of private accounts is akin to dirty politics that we have seen previously. Are we now going to see from other parties a trawling through, muckraking to try and dismantle or try and bring down some of these parties? Is this the beginning of that dirty politics?
I think that we can see that pretty crystal clear. The point that I would really like for us all to return to right now is that we have a member of Parliament that has been subjected to immense abuse and real-world death threats, which have also incorporated their child and their whānau. And the flow-on effects of all of this, including as a result of the fanning of the flames from Destiny's Church and the Deputy Prime Minister, is that the rainbow community is now squarely within the target.
Is it what specific comments or actions did you specifically write to the Prime Minister?
So I personally texted the Prime Minister on Saturday morning informing him that I wanted to talk to him directly about the fact that there were death threats and some really concerning behaviour that we were seeing, which I wanted to speak to him about. He, as I said, did not get back to me, passed that along to his Chief of Staff, who spoke to our Chief of Staff. This morning I specifically addressed the point about the escalating death threats and the fact that the Deputy Prime Minister was fanning the flames there, and that I wanted to talk to him directly so that he could take responsibility to shut this down.
Is it correct that 52 posts or something, 52 posts were
It's a private account, and when somebody sees that things on their private account are being leaked, including mis and disinformation relating to their child, I think that it's pretty normal for somebody to respond in such a way to try and shut that down.
So, look, that went on for another 7 minutes, but I will typify what it said. It was victimhood. I'm amazed she resisted the urge to say that Mr. Doyle might do self-harm or kill himself. There was no revelation, though I'm sure it's coming, that he has ADHD or some other mental condition or shoplifting. But the Greens, what the Greens do not tell you about his private account is that 52 pieces of content have been scrubbed off that account, and his profile on Instagram, as I said this morning, contains a symbol recognised around the world as a symbol used by pedophiles to alert their sick preferences to other people. Chloe Schwalbrook also, of course, ran off to the Prime Minister. Oh, there have been death threats, which once again predate anything that Winston Peters said. And she also seems to suggest there that every gay person acts this way, uses language for boys' pussy, and kind of sexualises their kids. I know a lot of, talked to some gay friends last night. They are outraged that she has used the gay community as cover for Benjamin Doyle. Now, there may well be a completely innocent explanation for all this, and Mr. Doyle is happy to come on this program and explain it. But Mr. Peters, like I think most people have seen this information, and I think, well, ZB aren't copying it covering it this morning. Mike Maserati Mike apparently said it was too icky. It was too icky. Do we have to cover it? It's important, Mike. It's important if we have someone with these tendencies sitting in our parliament on the taxpayer's dollar. As I said, once again, we've got death threats. It's terrible. But this is the way that the queer community talks. They're all very, very relaxed about making jokes about sex with children. That's just a lie, Chloe. That's a horrible piece of deflection, which slurs an entire community that I thought you were aligned with. I would love to hear from you this morning if you're a gay person. I'd love to hear from you. What do you think? Do you have a special code where you talk about kids sexually but you're not really meaning it? Or is Chloe making that bit up to cover Benjamin Doyle's, cover Benjamin Doyle's ass? Maybe that was an appropriate thing to say. Okay, so I've set the scene. This is what the Greens are spinning, and I've got to say at the moment, and I'm reading some headlines this morning, mainstream media are lapping it up, and you heard the bad quality of the questioning there. They don't really want they don't really want the truth out on this story because they're all woke. We're going to go to the news, and then after the break, we're going to analyse the Prime Minister's response to Chloe Swarbrick's plea for help from the Prime Minister. Winston's being mean to me. Winston's being mean to Benjamin. You must do something. This is terrible. You're whipping up hate against the community. Well, not. People are asking legitimate questions about an MP's on the taxpayer's dime and won't front for himself. But more on that. Stick with me. All right, let's continue our look into the curious case of Benjamin Doyle. And someone did point out, I'm sorry I couldn't play the whole thing. Soon after we cut off the Chloe Swarbrick press conference, she was asked what a bussy is. And I'm sorry for those with tender hearing and sensibilities, but this is the story. And unlike Mike Hosking, we cover the tough stories here on the platform. Bussy means boy's pussy. Chloe Swarbrick tried to modify that to say man's pussy. No. And you know very well that you were misleading people, Chloe. Boy's pussy. Bussy. You know what it means. And bussy galore was the word on the post of Mr. Doyle with a young child on his knee. I also note he has tattoos which contain symbolism, which is equated with people who like sleeping with children. So we have all this, and news is just coming through, and I'm trying to get hold of him. That Bob McCroskey of Family First has laid a complaint about Benjamin Doyle with the police. And I think the police, given the evidence already abroad in the public arena, have no choice but to launch an investigation into Benjamin Doyle. So there is some of the events. Now, as you heard in that press conference, whilst playing the victim and trying to downplay, this all happened before he was an MP, I covered an account trying to change the meaning of the word bussy, smearing the entire gay community in New Zealand by saying that they have a light-hearted way of talking about pedophilia that just straight people wouldn't understand. Chloe then said, I went running to the Prime Minister over the weekend. Well, boy, if she thought she was going to, and I have to say, and I think many observers would say, we half expected Chris Luxon to give her a big hug and say, yes, it's terrible, that naughty Winston. I'll have a word to him. Of course, this is terrible. That's what we thought he'd say. But boy, yesterday afternoon's press conference, which I went down to at Parliament, we saw, in fact, I wondered if someone hadn't body snatched Chris Luxon and, as I said this morning, replaced him with someone who had a spine. Have a listen to this.
The Greens reporting on you shut down the behaviour of the Deputy Prime Minister. He raised questions about a social media account owned by Benjamin Doyle. What is your take on that?
Well, the first thing I'd say is that any threats of violence, death threats or otherwise, is totally unacceptable on MPs or, frankly, any New Zealander. And I think accountability actually lies with those that are making those threats.
Do you know if any complaints have been made to you? If you know if any
Sorry,
complaints
Sean.
have been made to police?
Hey, I'll come to you.
Have any complaints been made to police by the Greens about death threats against Benjamin Doyle? They claimed there were immense death threats today. Do you know if Police, Diplomatic Protection or anyone else have had a complaint and are taking any action?
I'm not aware of any, but actually it's up to police to have independent actions. And as I said before, that actually the burden should be on the people making those threats, and that's up for police to investigate. Sorry, I'll go to Jamie. Sorry.
About the posts from Benjamin Doyle?
Look, I thought the language was really inappropriate. I think the reality is that in the scrutiny and the reality of political life, our social media language is scrutinised by the media. It's also scrutinised by fellow politicians and also the public. And, but ultimately, that's a case for the Greens leadership to deal with. Sorry?
Can you explain why that language may be inappropriate?
I just would say to you, I'm not going to get into the language. I'm just saying to you that I thought it was inappropriate.
The Green Party says that a subset of the Rainbow community uses this language in their own way, and that justifies it. So what is inappropriate about it?
Well, I think you've seen the terms. I think you've reported on the terms. The reality is, I just thought that language was inappropriate. If that was one of my MPs, I think you would rightfully be scrutinising me about what I'm doing about that social media language being used. I think those are questions for the Green Party and the leadership to answer for.
Do you think, Prime Minister, do you think that the Green Party has failed, the Green Party leadership has failed in a duty of care when it came to this MP in the vetting process? Obviously, they were aware of the posts. Obviously, they'd seen them. We know that the various different political members of the Green Party follow this account. Do you think that they failed in their duty of care to make this individual an MP in the first place, knowing that this was lurking?
Well, those are decisions ultimately that should be directed to the leaders of the Green Party. But I just say, from my own party's point of view, we spend quite a lot of time vetting social media for potential candidates and making sure that anything that's inappropriate is surfaced and has been dealt with. But the bottom line is, this is an issue for the Greens Party leadership. It's not an issue for me.
On to what you're responsible for, do you think that the conduct of Winston Peters, be it the tweets, the press conferences, the Facebook posts, all of it, do you think that that has been fully appropriate the entire time?
Well, as I said, the reality of political life is that we are deeply scrutinised for the language that we use by you, the media, by also our fellow MPs, and also the public, and I don't think he's doing anything different. Sorry, Tom. I'll come back to you, Jennifer.
Winston Peters has acknowledged, though, that he put out that post, the initial post, after he knew that death threats had already been made against Benjamin Doyle. Was that a reckless decision from Mr. Peters?
Well, I'll just put it to you, the only people who should be accountable for death threats are those that make those death threats. And, that's what we're saying. If there's an issue there, then the police need to be very much involved. And that's up for individuals concerned to talk to police about that.
Is Mr. Peters exacerbating the situation?
Sorry?
Is Mr. Peters exacerbating the situation and exacerbating the violence and threats levelled against Mr. Doyle?
Well, as I said before, as politicians, our language is deeply scrutinised on social media and other forms as well by fellow MPs, as is the case here, as by media, as is the case here, and also by the public.
Do you agree with Mr. Peters?
As I said, I found the language inappropriate. Sorry, Jenna.
Just the language we have a problem with, because Mr. Peters has also said that some of the photographs he found inappropriate, the ones with Benjamin and the child.
Again, what I'm reacting to is the language that's been used and the terms that have been used.
And the combination of that with the child?
The language, I haven't seen the post yet.
We're talking about Benjamin Doyle's comments, not Mr. Peters' comments, is that correct?
Sorry?
Whose comments are you disagreeing with? Benjamin Doyle?
I thought the comments from the Green MP were inappropriate. Yeah, the language was inappropriate.
So what we hear there is a Prime Minister who isn't going to say, "Oh, we're so sorry, Chloe," who isn't going to support her in playing the victim card and says, "No, like Mr. Peters, I found those comments inappropriate." I'm also going to suggest that maybe you had to be there. It was a pretty steely performance, and the woke journalists in the press gallery were trying to get him to dump on Mr. Peters, and he went nowhere near that. He put it straight back on Chloe Swarbrick and on Marama Davidson and the leader of the Green Party. I'm also going to say this. Prime Ministers have access to a lot more information and a lot more intelligence than we do. And I find it hard to believe that the officer of Prime Minister and Cabinet had not done a deep dive over the last few days into the online activities and profiles of Benjamin Doyle. And that the Prime Minister was so dismissive of expressing any support for the young man suggests to me that he might know something we don't. And there is even more fire where there is more smoke as regards Benjamin Doyle. I think it was a different... he was later asked to, and someone, I think it was Glenn McConnell, or someone said it was International Transgender Awareness Day, and someone had mispronounced Benjamin Doyle, and what did he think of that? And the Prime Minister came straight back and said, "I got no time for pronouns. I got more important things to do. People can call themselves what they want, and I'll get on with doing my job." Slap down. Now, I need to explain to you, there were a group of student journalists sitting to my right in the press gallery when this went down, and the poor little snowflakes all took a sharp intake of breath and almost fainted because the Prime Minister said, "I don't give a stuff about your pronouns." And what I saw was a Prime Minister who finally has read the room, who has done some stitching on his cloth political ear, recognised that Winston Peters and the war on woke is a winner. and he wants on board. And many people, and I have talked to a few National Party backbenchers last night, they are very pleased to see Chris Luxon is not messing around anymore. He's not letting the Greens play the victim card. And I guess it's a pretty, and I'll put this in very brutal terms, this isn't a hard political calculation. No one likes a potential pedophile. But no one. You never side with the potential pedophile. And even if he's not, you still made the right call. So there is, with Bob McCroskey, and we're going to try and get hold of Bob, having laid a police complaint. The game is now afoot. And as I said, the one thing that really got it for me, this blue swirly symbol in his Instagram bio, as it's called, a symbol so clearly associated with pedophilia and the networking of pedophiles that it is notified by Interpol and the FBI. And if you search it or try to create it on Meta, any Meta platform in the world, and I think on X as well, it gets blocked. That's how bad it is. This is not a subset of gay people who are expressing themselves in a satirical way, Chloe, and you know it's not. Let's have it out. Let's get the facts. Let Benjamin Doyle come forward and explain himself.